Welcome to Mind Your Matter. I'm Jodi.
I'm Shannon, and let's get into the conversation.
And dive into some conversation around identity and how it impacts us on every level of our being. And we're going to crack that open and talk to you guys about what we mean when we say identity, like what we're talking about. We're not talking about pronouns necessarily or any of that kind of stuff, but we're actually talking about the ways that we shape ourselves, and we shape the world around us because of our history, because of the past that maybe is difficult to let go of, or all different kinds of things that inform and shape us and make us the version of ourselves that we show up as in the world. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to Shannon.
So we were talking, obviously, before we hit record on this about, I think really kind of sometimes the health aspect of identity is what I'm talking about right now. And so how emotions are kind of the first clue that we're getting from our body to let us know, hey, something's an issue here, right? Something in you is being triggered, something in you, and we can have a whole conversation around values, and that's a big part of what I think our identity is, right? There's what we would consider our identity, which I think you and I would distinctly call our personality. That is, the things that were modeled to us, our programming, conditioning, traumas, the stories we started to tell ourselves about all of our experiences. I think most people think about that stuff as being their identity, right? Once we strip away oh, I'm a wife, I'm a mom, I'm a this profession, I'm that whatever, I think once people are like, no, beyond that, then people are like, oh, well, and then they start digging into the stuff that I would still consider this is programming, this is trauma, this is conditioning, this is all of these other things. So when we get into identity, I think that we're really getting into our soul. That's what our soul is, and how our soul is trying to express through this human form that it has, the skin suit that it has put on for this go round on planet Earth right now. And that's what our soul is expressing values all the time, like values and desires. Jodi has amazing conversation about desires, which I'm sure we'll get to have because that's fun. But when we talk about values, so like I'll share, a couple of mine. One of my values is connection. And I just use that word because people understand that word, but my thought around connection isn't what other people's usually is. Mine is mutuality. I want to have connection with people who are like-minded, who are kind of in a similar life, place, headspace. I want to have these big, deep conversations. That's connection for me. And so that is one of the things that my soul came here to do. It came here to express. So let's say I get into a fight with somebody because we're not on the same page about something, like drastically not on the same page about something. All of a sudden that value is wounded or threatened or injured, or it's triggered, right? And we may feel a number of things, right? If you're me, I always laugh and kind of joke and say, well, anger is my go-to emotion. I might get angry right off the drop, right? And that emotion is letting me know where that boundary, where that value has been violated. If I don't listen, or if I try to kind of push it off, or, and especially as women, I think we do this all the time. Like, no, I shouldn't be mad about that. I'm going to try to just see it from the other person's perspective, and, whatever other niceties that we have been trained to do throughout our lives. I just breached that first line of defense that my body came to me with. My body, like everything in me came to me and said, I'm angry about this. And I just shut it down. No, you're not. No, you're not. You're not angry about this. Everything's fine. It's all fine. Everything's fine. And then I wonder why I end up with some physical symptoms later on about something, right? And this to me is where our identity starts to run into our biology, because my biology just gave me all kinds of clues that things were not right. It gave me an opportunity to come back into alignment with my value, with my soul. And I didn't. And so then I end up experiencing, for anybody who, you know, has been around us long enough, they know we have conversations about German New Medicine, about GNM, about conflicts. I experience a conflict because of this thing. And then it's going to show up in my biology later. Like, Jodi, do you have experience with that?
Gosh, I I think I shared this with you. This is like a year or two ago. I don't know. At this point, time is what is time? It was a while ago. I think it was at least a year ago. I was driving and I was having an awareness in myself about some past experience in my family dynamic that every time I think of this, it would just incite an enormous amount of anger because I felt um basically steamrolled in a lot of ways in my childhood and in growing up, you know? I just felt like I didn't have a voice, I wasn't allowed, whatever. Not even going to break it down right now, but I was having this experience and I was realizing like gosh, I have so much anger in me about this thing, this unexpressed place where I feel like I was made small or like pushed into like this littleness, this little smallness in my life. And I was sitting with it and I was going, okay, well that's not even happening to me right now. That isn't even in my present experience. And what's it going to take to let that scenario be transmuted, to literally let it be gone from my past, from the memory that I'm holding, because I keep revisiting it because I have this need to be angry. I have this need for it. It's chemical at this point. And I can see that I'm craving this. Let me reactivate this anger, this chemical reaction inside my body. And I was like, wait a minute, hold on, pause. I don't want to create that because I'm going to pay the price biologically. If I insist on feeling this anger, when I'm done feeling it, then I'm going to have to heal it. You know, there's your little take on feel it to heal it. Okay. So when I'm done feeling it, then I'm going to have to heal it biologically. And I don't want to go through the healing of that anger in my body because I've already done it before and it wasn't fun and it's too expensive. And so it was a moment for me where I was like, I knew I was reimagining and reliving and like rebuilding a memory basically inside my body so that I could feel these feelings. But I was also like, I've got to stop doing this to myself because that conflict is going to force me to have to do something in my biology that what do I need to do it for? It's not even happening. It's not even right here, right now. And so hopefully that answers your question. But that is just like one of my many experiences where I'm like, yes, there was this challenge in me about what I'm really here for, who I really am, or what I'm really here to express. It wasn't even about, I don't want to be angry. It was like, I don't want to carry this.
Yeah.
I really don't have a problem with anger. Like, be angry. And also, if I continue to live in it all the time, I'm going to pay the price biologically. Like, there's a price that must be paid, for that. And it just wasn't worth it to me. And listen, I'd love to say, and then anger disappeared and I was never angry again. Not the case. Not the case at all. I've had to express and walk through other bouts of anger. It just wasn't that story anymore. It was other stories like it, which I know we'll get to talk about at some point in this journey of our podcast on breaking those things down and like literally clearing ourselves out of those cycles. But yes, to your point.
Yeah. It's because, and I think that anything that we're going to feel like really big like that, like if it's anger, and for some people it's going to be, fear. People talk about fear or anxiety, or, grief or shame or whatever, any number of things that you can feel, that kind of rise up in you in the moment. And not necessarily just anger, but my thing is, can we let those things point us back to our values, a value, right? Because I think that's the entire purpose. And I think that's what we miss. Like this is the identity conversation kind of in a nutshell, right? Is that the world is going to tell me, like the world of psychology or even the world of the new age or whatever, right? That I need to dismantle everything that ever happened, and I'm going to have to feel all of it to heal all of it, and whatever, right? Whatever other kind of popular philosophy there is about it. When really, I think that the whole point of those things is to urge us back to ourselves. It's to urge us back to, like, there is a breach. There is a breach right now between who you are and how you're showing up, right? Or who you are and how you feel, or who you are and what happened, whatever. There's a chasm here. And I think that those emotions pop up so that we can get back to, we can bridge that and come back to ourselves. And instead, most of us, and I am so guilty of this, it's not even funny. Most of us do exactly the opposite. I'm gonna dismantle this, and I'm gonna take this back to when I was 5 years old, and I'm gonna all of these things, right? And then I'm gonna cement that into my identity or my personality, whatever we want to kind of call it, as opposed to getting back to my authentic identity, right? And then I'm just layering this identity, this personality. I'm just stacking layer on layer on layer. Like, oh, I'm a victim of this, and this thing happened to me when I was young, and this thing happened, and this person left. And before you know it, like, that's who you are. And you can't live outside of that identity that you have created for yourself. Like, I know I've done that. And, no one, I've never seen anyone live outside the identity that they've created for themselves. That's
Oh
our
yeah,
self concept.
right. And I wrote a post a few years ago called Case of Mistaken Identity. And I was actually bringing to light the ways in which people are constantly searching for themselves, the reflection of themselves in all of these external things, and it's like astrology tells me who I am, and this spiritual practice tells me who I am, or I put on an identity because I've become this version of myself, this enlightened version of myself, and I'm a master of this, or I'm a guardian of this, or I'm a keeper of that. And not only that, then it's like my shortcomings tell me who I am. My roles that I play in my life tell me who I am. My diagnosis tells me who I am. All of these ways that we become identified, and then we solidify that within ourselves. And then our biology makes every attempt at expressing what we have declared as this is who I am. And most of the times it's pretty schizophrenic. If I'm being real, it's just like it's so many things. And we're asking our body to demonstrate these really like wide versions of who we think we are, and varied things. And like you said, layer upon layer upon layer. And the body's going, whoa, whoa, whoa. Like, okay, so I've got to express that I'm traumatized, but I'm also healed, and I'm enlightened, but I'm also plagued by the devil and his tactics. And you know what I'm saying? Like, it starts
I
to
have a
get
family history of scarcity, but I'm also abundant. And
abundant. And it's like, it's so crazy, you guys. It's crazy making, and it's never going to lead us to a place of feeling totally like, and I'm set free from all of that nonsense, and I am me. I had this experience the other night. I was talking to my husband. We were having just conversation about life and just ideas that we have, and visions of the future. And this moment, I was like really just expressing gratitude. I was feeling so much gratitude about certain things in my life that I honestly take for granted a lot. And I noticed it, and I was like, oh my gosh, like I am actually super grateful for these very um like minor things. I think most people would think they were minor, but they've just become so repetitive that I don't stop and take a minute to like say thank you. And I was doing that, and I had this like moment of just feeling this thing come through me where I was like, I'm so grateful that I'm here and that I'm me. And it was like, it was a big deal because how many times do we work hard at changing ourselves because we don't want to be me, you know? It's like that's the last thing we want to be. But really what we're escaping or thinking that we're working to escape is the false versions of ourselves. And we've taken it on and said that's who I am, and then we're like, get away from it. And it was just a moment of clarity that I had, and I just like said it out loud. I was like, I'm just so grateful that I'm alive, that I'm here, and that I'm me. And that was emotional because I thought, I've literally never just given thanks for being me. You know what I mean? Like really deeply at this level of, whoa, like this really matters. And um when I said it, I even had an awareness of what I was saying. And it wasn't bogged down with a bunch of, me the mom, me the wife, me the entrepreneur, me the podcaster, me the whatever, it wasn't me. It was like this core of me, this like essence of me. And it made such a huge shift in me in that moment, you know. And I'm saying that because I think most people are walking around and they are their own case of mistaken identity. And that mistake in identity is causing them to see the world in a certain way. And that the way that they're viewing the world and their perspective about their life just continues to add layer upon layer of challenge and difficulty and overcoming, and constantly having to basically like ready yourself at any moment for the next thing that's coming, or how you're going to brace for this. And then we start to get into the conversation of like, does your nervous system have capacity? Are you at a place where you've opened yourself up big enough that you can hold? And maybe you need to get back to the basics of resourcing yourself. And I'm like, I don't disagree that those things have their place and they can be valuable. It's just if we're pursuing that so that we can manage the challenge of our warped perception, then we're never going to find our way through. Do you know what I mean? Like it's always
Yeah.
going to be this constant balancing act. And I don't believe we're here to live our lives that way. Our perception needs to be healed.
Yes, it is the scene in the Matrix with the spoon, right? It's like we are constantly trying to bend the spoon, bend the
Right.
spoon, bend the spoon. And the kid's like, no, you just have to realize there is no spoon.
Exactly.
Like, what? It reminds me, everything you just said reminds me of an interview I saw with Jim Carrey a long time ago. And he was talking about, being depressed because, he's kind of famous for the mental health challenges that he's had. And he said that somebody that he works with calls depression deep rest. And he said that's what your body is demanding. Your body is demanding deep rest from the character that you have been playing. And I was like, I just listened. I was like, that's exactly what it is. It's brilliant. It's genius. And he even says that. He's like, I've played a lot of characters. He's like, Jim Carrey is my most famous character. Right. And it's like we all think like, oh no, he is Jim Carrey and he's played all of these other characters. And he'd be the first to tell you, like, no, that's my Jim Carrey is my most famous character, but that's not who I am either. None of those things are who I am. And I think the same thing could be said of all of us, right? Like the Shannon that a lot of people know, that's a character, right? That's a personality, that's a character, and it is not the core of who I am. Exactly how you said when you were so thankful for who you are. That is not tied to any of those other things that you probably would have used to describe yourself before. It was something that was more a feeling and a knowing that was probably just beyond description.
Right. And I want to add this in because I think especially in spiritual conversations and in spiritual circles, there's been this thing about like really vilifying the ego, and making the ego our arch nemesis, and like we're here to kill the ego. People talk about ego death and all of that stuff. And I'm like, could we just actually like undo the words death and ego from each other because our personality or our ego, if you will, it serves a purpose. It does have a purpose. We aren't meant to be a slave to it, that's for sure. And yet, it is a really beautiful tool for experiencing what we have decided on a soul level to express. So it does give us that feedback all the time, right? And so I just, man, this conversation starts to get into this thing which you and I talk about so much whenever people seem to be on those wheels of like, I want this to improve in my life, my health, my family, my finances, my whatever, all the conditions of being human, right? And we start to have these conversations between the two of us that's like, this is an identity issue. There's a massive identity issue. And unfortunately, people will like think that they're leaving behind some version of themselves and then just go to the next thing that's allegedly a remedy or a cure. And they've really just taken that pattern with them of it's something else and it's something else. This will help me identify better. This will help me have a different experience. And it's like, no, this is an identity conversation. Who do you think you are? Because if you think you're the person that is in need of a remedy, then that's who you think you are. And then everything in your life has to show you that. And if you think you're the person who is alone and doesn't have friends and struggles to build connection, then that's who you are. And your life must bring that back to you. You know what I'm saying? And so these are not like just what's my name and how do I dress myself. Those things can definitely display to the world around us who we think we are, for sure. It's the deeper things inside of us that go, what are the stories I tell myself about myself constantly? What are the things I experience in my life that I'm literally linking to my past? And I sit and then I circle around those old stories about, well, my mom was like this, and my dad was like this, and my grandmother was like this. And we think we're doing it to solve some mystery
Right.
about who we are, you know? And I there's a person that I listen to constantly, and they'll say this thing, and I love it so much. They're like, okay, imagine this is your first day on earth. This is it. You stepped out into the planet. This is your first day. You've got none of that going on. None of those stories that you've been telling are even relevant because you don't know anything about it. This is day one. Who are you now? Who do you choose to be? Who is it that's stepping out into this space and creating and expressing? You're not going to sit there and go, well, let me find out where I came from.
Right.
You can better know who to be. It's like, what? You're here. You're here right now. Like, you inform the space now. Who do you choose to be now? And I'm not kidding. Literally, just being able to get up every morning and put your feet on the floor when you get out of bed and go, it's my first day. It's day one. I'm starting today. Am I seriously going to sit in all the stuff that I've been trying to heal all these years about who I think I am or what I think isn't working in my life or XYZ thing? Or am I choosing today that this is what today looks like for me? This is who I am today. This is how I show up today. It's literally miraculous what can move and change in your life just from giving yourself the mercy and the grace that you say is supposed to be new to you every morning and you don't use.
Right.
Like, how about we try that? And so there's a lot of let me clear it up first and then I'll be free from it. And it's like, I heard this said years ago. The statement was, you don't get out of survival, you start out. In other words, you're not going to dig yourself out of this. And all the supplements and all the courses and all the methods and all the posturing and all the fascia release and all the whatever you want to call it, none of that is going to get you fully out of this idea that you have of yourself that you're trying to outrun. Honestly, you have to start. You literally just turn and you go a different direction. this is who I am now. This is what I'm about now. I'm changed. I'm changing, right? And so we just don't live in a world that talks enough about that.
Well, and I think because I've had these conversations with people, and they love to say to me, "Well, but Shannon, as soon as I changed my diet, everything changed." Or as soon as I started doing XYZ thing, so many things changed. And how do you explain that? Right? I get those. And I'm like, it's more than likely because the story that you've had playing in the background of your head for years and years is about how powerless you are to change. And in changing your diet, you just proved yourself wrong. Now you're telling a different story. Whether you realize it or not, that diet change was actually not a diet change at all. It was a self concept change. You became someone who could do something, who was disciplined, who could do something for themselves for the first time. And so it's like even those things that you and I will call band-aids, the diet, the fascia, the this, the that, even those things that people will swear, oh, I changed this and this changed my life. It wasn't the band-aid that changed your life. It was the story that you had to believe and start telling yourself in order to make that change to begin with.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, you're never going to escape this identity conversation.
Mm-mm.
You're never going to escape it, and doing certain things without having an awareness of who you think you are, right? Like when people are like, "Oh, that sounds like a good thing. Let me just add that to my repertoire of all the things I do to be a good person, or to be optimal, or to be, my best self or whatever. Let me just add that thing in. I've heard it seems really popular. This is trending right now. Let's try this thing." And it's like the doing of the things without the awareness behind why you're doing it often leads to nothing, but just another thing that you can put up on your little check off list of, and I do this thing every day, or I do this thing in my life, or whatever. And I'm a part of this club, because now we have to belong to something. And which is also an identity conversation, I might add. So, anyway, you're just never going to escape it. Do you know what I mean? Like, until you're ready to choose who you are going to jump from wheel to wheel and think that you are actually doing something, but you're still a hamster. And maybe you're a skinny one now and you were a chubby one before. Maybe you're a muscly one now and you were weak before. Maybe you're a rich hamster now and you were poor before. You know what I mean? Like maybe you're married now and you were single before, but you're still the hamster on the wheel. And I think what begins to break that stuff down is really becoming aware of who we say we are, how we view the world. Like that identity conversation is so critical to being able to mind our matter, because otherwise we're just out here in this simulated experience, trying things on, dabbling here, dabbling there, a little spiritual, a little aware, a little, gangster and a little prayerful. You know what I mean? Like, we're just going to put it all on. And who do I need to be in this little simulated experience to have, you know, my most optimal experience? Like, you're not going to do it from here.
Right.
The best you can do is to retrain your personality.
Yeah, you can't matter your matter.
No, no, but you can sure give it a good effort.
Yeah, I can give you a long list of the things I've tried to matter my matter.
Yep, 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 yep. Get on another wheel, by all means. If you like that wheel, get on another one. It's just at some point we break through that. And at some point we break through it because the soul within us says, enough. Enough. What's the SNL skit? It's kind of old. I'm literally showing my age here by talking about this one. But it's the SNL skit where the guy would come in and he was always asked to like do the computer stuff. And he would come in and people were like, I did the thing and da da da, and they're trying to explain to him what they did and they're having some issue and he'd just go, move, just like get out, like, don't even talk anymore. It was funny. He always did it like while they were trying to explain themselves, and he'd be like, move, and that's literally how I feel about our soul ultimately in our experience here on the planet. Unfortunately, some people experience calamity and they experience chaos and challenge and sickness and all kinds of things as the soul within us makes every effort to get us on the right track with what we're actually here for. And because we misidentify ourselves so much, it is, like you said, one of the biggest ways that we create that separateness, that chasm of our soul has a very definitive purpose. It has a very definitive path and a plan for getting there. And our little personality, with all of its trauma and all of its, quirks, and this is just the way that I am, and all that stuff, shapes itself and molds itself, and then sees the world a certain way and starts to act according to what it decides the world is, and all the meaning it has made out of everything, which we know we're the big meaning makers of everything. And so we've made everything mean what it means. And then we act accordingly because of we've decided we know, and our soul is finally like, move, time for you to move out of the way. And I may bring this thing to you and I may present this thing to you in an effort to wake you up
Yeah.
out of your hypnosis that makes you think you got this when you clearly don't got this,
Yeah.
um and it's impossible. I feel like this specific thing is so important to the entire conversation of what your life ultimately becomes. You're not going
Yeah.
to.
Yeah. Because I wish that my soul would actually say to me, move. But instead, it comes to me with physical issues, or it comes to me with anxiety or depression or financial issues, or you know what I mean? It is some life thing to try to get your attention to focus you back inward, back to your soul, back to yourself. And I think kind of one of the saddest things about living at the time that we live in right now is how many things there are to try to explain away those, that calling of your soul. You know what I mean? It's like, oh no, that is this condition that has to do with, or whatever. It's so easy to explain away when your soul's actually trying to be like, hey, focus, pay attention. And we want to be like, oh, no, it's because of all these things going on in the world right now, or it's because of this relationship issue that I'm having, and it's like, no, babe, you're missing it. Like, this is literally your soul trying to pull you back into alignment with your soul, right? It's
Yes.
really like the personality has been driving the car for too long, and most of us, I said that to somebody and they're like, yeah, I think my soul's in the passenger seat. I'm like, babe, your soul's not in the passenger seat. It is tied up in duct tape in the trunk. Like, we are not, we are not there, right? The passenger seat would be a big improvement at this point, right? And I know because I've been there, right? I have had my soul duct taped in the trunk. But our soul is designed to be driving the car. Like, that's the whole point. Our soul is designed to be driving the car, and the personality is along for the ride. It is the passenger princess in the relationship.
Yeah. I like to think of it like this. Like I agree with you so much. I also like to think of the soul as the vehicle, and we're supposed to be like in this back seat, chilling, enjoying, and the soul's like, and see this over here, and look at this over here, just taking us to the next thing and the next thing and the next thing.
It's
And
a
we're
tour guide. The soul is the tour guide.
the ride and have the experience of it. And we just our identity, because we live in a realm where that really matters so much, who you think you are, because it tells us where we belong, and because belonging is such an important part of our makeup, because we feel so separate, because we look at the world around us and decide that we are separate, because we believe this. And so then it's just like the chicken or the egg kind of thing. and we get wrapped up in that wheel and the tires off the car rolling down the hill. You know what I mean? And we're in it, the car is way back there, don't even know where it is, we're just in the wheel trying to survive. And so yeah, I feel that this conversation around identity, which of course we have this personality, and we think that the way we act or the things we like and don't like, or whatever, that's who we are. And then we go to work on changing that part of us that we think is defective, you know?
Broken.
Yeah. And again, it just sets us on a path of jumping from wheel to wheel. And like, now I'm on the personal development wheel. Now I'm on the self-improvement wheel. And let me improve myself. And it's like, but yourself is not this version of you that you think it is. That's not the self. The self is the impermanent, I mean, the permanent part of you that is everlasting, doesn't ever change, and is anchored in and expressed from the mind of all intelligence, the omnipresence of all life and the life force that creates and substantiates everything we see and witness in this little temporal realm. So it's just really going to require us to get back in touch with that real permanent identity in order for us to cure so much of what ails us in our life. And that's why I love these conversations.
Yeah.
It's like we're here to mind our matter and to stop taking these approaches that this simulated experience constantly entices us with to cure ourselves.